Hi, I'm Tolulope, Kolade, Tcode, an African voiceover artist from Nigeria, and this is my podcast, Everything Voiceovers, the African Perspective Podcast, where I take you on a journey to discovering industry insights through expert interviews, practical tips, and personal anecdotes.
You can simply call this your go-to resource for all things voiceover related. Buckle up as we discover the art, craft, and business of voiceovers through a uniquely African lens on this episode. Enjoy!
Hi guys, welcome to episode 41, season 3 of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, The African Perspective. I am Tcode, your host, and it's good to be back. Yes, finally, I made it out of the woods. And the woods, if you're thinking, is the woods of just thinking and thinking and thinking. And I realized that sometimes we just have to stop thinking and just do, right? Because we could get so caught up in the web of thinking and trying to make sure that everything is right. Sometimes you just have to do. And I should have learned this lesson already, but then there's just some things that keeps reoccurring as we grow in life, because the more we grow, we want to make things as close to perfect as possible. Anyways, welcome back to listening to my podcast. And yes, it's the Everything Voiceovers podcast. For those of you that are just new to listening to this podcast, it's all about voiceovers from an African's perspective. I live in Nigeria, and I'm an African, so I thought it was okay to do a podcast that would talk about voiceovers from the way we see it over here. I'm about 6 years officially into the voiceover game. I've been doing a couple of things around voiceovers before that time. But then in my 6 years, I have learned a lot from people around me. I have studied the voiceover industry, and I'm still studying the voiceover industry. And there's just a lot of information that I was able to absorb in these 6 years. And when I compare it to what I listen to from voiceover artists across the world, I see some uniqueness about the African voiceover space. I know more about the Nigerian voiceover space than I know about the rest of the continent. So from time to time, I get to invite voiceover artists from Nigeria and outside the Nigerian space just to talk about voiceover from their perspective. Now, the purpose of the podcast is to ensure that people can have something to refer to when they're trying to navigate the voiceover industry, right? So the stories you listen to from voiceover professionals will inspire you and will help you find out a thing or two about how you can properly navigate, I'm using that word again, your voiceover journey. And why is because voiceover can be a lonely journey. Well, it depends on how you approach it, but we need a community, or we need communities to help sustain the vibe. For Africans, and I think even for the rest of the world, but I believe majorly for us over here, it's not an easy terrain. There are lots of countries that you hardly feel the activeness of the voiceover industry in those communities. Perhaps we can't really say it's an industry per se, but then there are voiceovers happening over there. So, I mean, the consciousness of voiceover is not as it is in places like Nigeria, Kenya, South Africa, Egypt, because these are like the major hotspots of voiceovers that I know in the continent. Not to say that they're not other parts of Africa that do voiceovers. Of course, there are people who do voiceovers across Africa. In Ghana, sorry if I'm going to have to mention all the African countries to be correct or even politically correct. But you get what I'm saying, right? Voiceover is not it's not the core as it is over there, in the West. So it's important for us to have a podcast like this that will help us document our stories and spotlight or shed light on the things that we've been doing or we are doing in the continent. So the podcast will help you to figure out voiceover in the historical perspective, like what's been happening years before now. And we can also look at it from what we can anticipate to happen years to come. So that's it about the podcast. And about me, I am a voiceover artist. And in fact, I do this full time. And lately I've been doing a lot of sound designs, right? And that is one realm that keeps me extremely busy. This year started for me like bam, bam, boom, we're gonna get it. Like I had a lot of energy coming into 2024. If you're a Nigerian, you know the popular slogan, no grief for anybody. That's like a motto that Nigerians just unanimously agreed that we're going to be running with for 2024. I don't know how that happened, but no grief for anybody, which can be interpreted to mean, how do I interpret this? If I would take it word for it, it'd be something like, do not agree for anybody. But the meaning, right, what it intends to mean is you just have to be aggressive and maybe not aggressive, kind of like add some aggression to it in how you want to approach whatever you want to do in 2024. Like do what you want to do without giving a hoof about what anybody thinks. So that's how I can describe no grief for anybody. Anyways, that was, and that is still the motto for me in 2024, as many Nigerians. However, I didn't see the measure or the volume of work that I got towards the later part of January. And it's got me so busy that I couldn't keep up with content creating and many other things that I wanted to do. And this has also affected my ability to kickstart the podcast again. But here I am. And guess what? I was able to start content creating, the short contents like 30 seconds to 90 seconds content that I put on Instagram. And I have had a couple of episodes that I'd like you guys to just go check out. And I hope to continue doing that. So that takes a lot of work, putting together the videos and editing it and the content itself. And then I opened a YouTube channel because I hope to also do more extended videos about voiceover tips, tricks, and just my comments or commentary on voiceover generally. But I've not had the time to do these things, right? And that brings me back to what I was saying earlier, that voiceover can be a lonely journey because at the end of the day, you are more than a voiceover artist if you're going to, make this a career. Voiceover is just one of the many things that you should know how to do. The other alternative to not doing everything is outsourcing the rest of the work to people. And that would mean that you'll be spending a lot of money to do the things that you don't want to do or you can't do or you don't have the time to do. So most of us find ourselves doing more than one thing. You're the voiceover artist, and you probably also would do editing, sound designing, marketing, which is a big deal, if you want to make money in voiceovers. So there's just a lot of things tied to being a voiceover artist that gets us very, very busy. So that's just the reality of it. And I'm trying to keep up. After this podcast, I'll have my time editing the podcast and packaging it, putting it together, the graphics, the everything. So it's a lot of work. So please pardon me if sometimes I'm not able to give you all the things that I promised to give you. I'll try. I really try. But it's interesting, right? So that's it about what I've been up to. And and I've been doing a lot of trainings, like facilitating trainings and teaching people voiceovers one-on-one. And I have to say, that has opened me up to so many discoveries. So many discoveries. And I'll be sharing one of those in today's episode. Like, this is going to be the main thing that I'll be talking about in today's episode. Lately, I was trying to educate a student of mine about voiceovers, right? And this time around, I wanted to help her to become a better performer. And I realized that while she would listen to the things that I taught her, it was quite a bit difficult to bring it to reality. So, after a couple of studies, I then realized that she was doing very well to listen, to take to corrections and all of that. But in reality, there was not enough references for her to tap from and refine our speaking abilities or performance techniques, so to speak. Now, here's what I'm trying to explain. Away from this, but then this is an example. They say we are what we eat, meaning what you consume is who you are, like physically, health-wise. What you eat determines how healthy you are. Also what you do, right? So you eat and you do, like you do exercises, you go to work. Your lifestyle basically determines how healthy you'll be. Now let's bring that to voiceover. What you consume also determines what you'll give out. Like they say, garbage in, garbage out. So, I know this is not a new discovery to some of you, but to be honest, it is worth considering, okay? So, if you're thinking of becoming better, of course, which we all are thinking of becoming better, and you've probably ticked the box of getting a coach or ticked the box of going for a training or you just practice every time. These are beautiful things to continue doing. But how about your listening diet? Have you thought about the things you listen to on a daily basis? The kind of audio that you consume, the people you speak to often, and what you watch and listen to? Have you thought about these things? If all you do is talk to people on a daily with your very raw accent, and then you listen to these people on a daily, and that's all you consume day in, day out, it's going to be somewhat of a struggle to recreate that commercial in the quality that you imagine yourself creating it in. The point is, you need to feed yourself with great commercials if you're going to become better at performing commercials. And this takes me back to something I did, long time ago. And I mean, it was just, if I look at my trend, my trajectory, this is something I'd always done. I have been doing consistently, and I think it has really helped me a lot. Apart from growing up listening to the right things, like the cartoons I would watch, the news would listen to, because my father would always watch CNN and BBC, and so many foreign content that I was exposed to growing up, which helped me get familiar with the right way of speaking, or proper English, whichever one, probably American or British. It's also the fact that after a while I was conscious and deliberate about listening to the right things. So it didn't stop at just watching TV. I then became addicted, I use that word, to radio at some point. And this was an era where you would have OAPs doing stuff, talking about music. And not just that, you also had a barrage of commercials on radio. I mean, it's still so, right? But then, because I loved radio and I'd listen to the voices on radio, I would also listen to the commercials on radio, and I'll mimic these things. And then it just made me come into the reality of being a commercial voiceover artist in my head, even though I wasn't proven to be so. But I'll do the voiceovers or I'll kind of like repeat after them or mimic those voiceovers with my voice without any sort of like equalize. I mean, I just did it raw. But then I kind of like twisted my voice, like what you're hearing right now. Now, these practices helped me because I was listening to the right things and I was doing the right things equally. Right? And over time, it just became like so easy for me to grasp commercials so well and just do them so well, because on a daily basis I was listening to them. I worked on radio as well, so me and commercials are like 5 and 6 and I enjoyed it. And now coming back to my student and also to what I have realized, a lot of people want to sound very well, but they don't fill up their listening diet with the great sounds that they want to become. Okay? Now, what that means basically is, if you want to sound well, if you want to sound better with commercials, fill your day with listening to commercial voiceovers. And practically, how do you do that? You could listen to radio. So what I told the student is download an app called Radio Garden. Now, that was what I did years back, especially when I was on radio. I'll download Radio Garden and I'll listen to radio stations across the world, literally. I listen to radio stations in Lagos, listen to radio stations in South Africa, in the UK, in the US, and I just wanted to understand how radio was being done. But then I'll also get to listen to the commercials, and I was always marveled at the production techniques and how the voiceovers just went seamlessly, the quality of the voiceover. So that really exposed me early on to quality voiceovers, and that helps you to tell what is right or what is good enough and what is not really good. And then when you have a coach to help you enroll for a voiceover training, it becomes easy for your coach to help you realize the right things and what things are not right, because you're familiar with them already. So this is a practice that I think you should adopt if you want to get better in your voiceover performance. Listen to the right commercials. And it's not just all about commercials. If you want to do better audiobooks, listen to the right audiobooks. Listen to audiobooks every day, every time. There are podcasts that kind of like are wired around audiobooks, or you can just go to Audible or any audiobook service platform and buy a book that you care about and listen to it. Like, I have voiceover audiobooks that I love to listen to, and it just helps me to get into the spirit of being an audiobook voiceover artist, right? If you want to be a better narrator, listen to narrations. If you want to be better at animations, listen to animations. Like, I don't know any animation voiceover artist that is not crazy about animations, or at least doesn't pay attention to animations. Especially when you look at young kids these days, a lot of them are sounding like animations already because they spend most of their times listening to or watching cartoons, and they just absorb the sound, the audio, the speaking system that they get on those content. So these are things that I think you need to do. These will go a very long way in helping to shape how you speak, because the truth is, and I a lot of times you can't really blame people for how they sound to an extent, right? There is the part where they need to be conscious about it, right? But generally speaking, a lot of us are products of, if not all of us, are products of our environment. So the people you listen to, which first of all will be your parents, and then your teachers, your siblings, your immediate community, how they speak goes a long way to affect how you speak. But these is like the early stages of growing up as a child, and you can't really control what you listen to, or rather what you feed on audio-wise. So as you grow up, now you have the opportunity to control it. You can go as far as letting the people you speak to the most every day, could be your partner or wherever it is, right? Your friends, your siblings, your parents, I don't know, your teachers. Make it deliberate that you speak back correctly to them, even if they don't speak as, correctly as, you want it to be. But you don't respond in that same frequency of just speaking, in quote, lame English or whatever language it is that you're speaking. Anyways, you get the point. Ensure that you speak right as much as you're listening right. So this is what I hope to, or I have shared with you today on this episode of the Everything Voiceovers podcast, the African perspective. And I hope that somebody is going to make this a practice. You speak well when you listen well. It doesn't stop there. There are other things that you can do to make your voiceover journey and practices better. But these are things that we'll talk about in coming episodes. Okay, so that's it for today's episode. Thank you so much for listening. On other episodes, I'll be inviting fellow voiceover artists to talk to me about their own voiceover journey. Like I have a lot of voiceover friends, right? And I want to listen to them. Tell us how they do it. Tell us their stories, both my contemporaries and the older generation, right? I want to talk to the millennials. I'm a millennial, by the way. I want to talk to the millennials. I want to talk to the Gen Zs. And I want to talk to those who have been there from like the 90s and the early 2000s. I just want to have a compendium of stories that will inspire us to become better voiceover artists. So stick with me and tell somebody about the podcast. Also, I should mention that the podcast is now on YouTube. Yay! So YouTube decided to create a podcast feature for the platform. And that really saved me a lot of work because I was already going to start converting every episode, the entire 40 episodes that I had previously done, to videos and then upload them to YouTube manually. But now with YouTube's podcast feature, you just get to upload your RSS feed and voila, everything comes up on YouTube automatically, just like it happens on every other podcast listening platform that your RSS feed is on. So that just makes it easy, guys. Go to YouTube and you can listen and also watch the podcast over there. I'll be updating you guys about other things later on. And I have a community for this podcast as well on Telegram. So I'll be dropping the link in the show notes so you can also, keep up to date. So guys, that's it again on today's episode. I am Tcode. Follow me on Tcode_70 on Instagram to check out the stuff that I've been doing. And every other thing, I'll update you in the next episode or in the show notes. Thanks for listening and see you in the next episode. Bye.